Catholic pilgrims, as we learn from one of Spain's most revered saints, Saint Teresa of Avila, a spirited doctor of the Church. Join me, Amy Thomas, once a week as we read from Saint Teresa's book, The Interior Castle. Welcome to the Fifth Mansion, Catholic pilgrims. Saint Teresa is pretty excited to share about this mansion with us, and I look forward to what she has to say. Now, before we begin, I thought it would be a good idea to give some background information on the Carmelites, because that is the order Saint Teresa belonged to, and she's going to say today, quote, "All we who wear the holy habit of the Carmelites are called to prayer and contemplation," unquote. Since she is writing to her fellow nuns, I thought we might briefly get to know the history of the Carmelites. This information will be taken from the Britannica Encyclopedia. The Carmelites, one of the four great mendicant orders, meaning they beg for alms, of the Roman Catholic Church, and it dates back to the Middle Ages. The origin of the order can be traced to Mount Carmel in northwestern Israel, where a number of devout men, apparently former pilgrims and crusaders, established themselves near the traditional fountain of Elijah about 1155 AD. Their rule was written between 1206 and 1214 by St. Albert, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, and approved in 1226 by Pope Honorius III. The monks hoped to continue on Mount Carmel the way of life of the prophet Elijah, whom early Christian writers depicted as the founder of monasticism. The early Carmelites were hermits. They lived in separate cells or huts and observed vows of silence, seclusion, abstinence, and austerity. Soon, however, the losses of the crusading armies in Palestine made Mount Carmel unsafe for the Western hermits, and around 1240, they set out for Cyprus, Sicily, France, and England. The first general meeting of the Carmelites was held in England in 1247 under St. Simon Stock, and the order was adapted to the conditions of the Western lands to which it had been transplanted. The order transformed itself from one of hermits into one of mendicant friars. In this form, the Carmelites established themselves throughout Western Europe, becoming popular as an order closely analogous to the Dominicans and Franciscans. The first institution of Carmelite nuns was founded in 1452. Of all the movements in the Carmelite order, by far the most important and far-reaching in its results was the reform initiated by Saint Teresa of Avila. After nearly 30 years in a Carmelite convent, she founded in 1562 a small convent in Avila, wherein a stricter way of life was to be observed. Teresa's order became the order of Discalced Carmelite nuns. In spite of opposition and difficulties of many kinds, St. Teresa succeeded in establishing not only convents, but also, with the cooperation of St. John of the Cross, a number of friaries that followed this stricter observance. The aim of the reform was to restore and emphasize the austerity and contemplative character of primitive Carmelite life. Now, I have been to St. Carmel in the Holy Land, and if you ever go on a pilgrimage there with a tour group, chances are you will visit Mount Carmel. The church is built around the cave that is said to have housed Elijah. And it's just a beautiful church, and if you get to go there, you are going to love the inside of the church, because there is the main church, but then below, like where the altar is, there's the cave. And so the cave is there within the church, and it's just a very cool experience. I know that that was a bit more than normal in the opening of our podcast, but I wanted to share that bit of history with you before our readings, in an effort to better understand St. Teresa and her order. So, our readings today will be from the Fifth Mansion, Chapter 1, Numbers 1 through 4. And today we're going to jump right into our readings. Oh, my sisters, How shall I describe the riches, treasures, and joys contained in the fifth mansions? Would it not be better to say nothing about them? They are impossible to depict, nor can the mind conceive, nor any comparisons portray them, all earthly things being too vile to serve the purpose. Send me, O my Lord, light from heaven, that I may give some to these thy servants, some of whom by thy good will often enjoy these delights, lest the devil in the guise of an angel of light should deceive those whose only desire is to please thee. I said some, but in reality there are very few who never enter this mansion, some more and some less, but most of them may be said at least to gain admittance into these rooms. I think that certain graces I am about to describe are bestowed on only a few of the nuns, but if the rest only arrive at the portal, they receive a great boon from God, for many are called, but few are chosen. All we who wear the holy habit of the Carmelites are called to prayer and contemplation. This was the object of our order. To this lineage we belong. Our holy fathers of Mount Carmel sought in perfect solitude and utter contempt of the world for this treasure, this precious pearl of which we speak, and we are their descendants. How little do most of us care to prepare our souls that our Lord may reveal this jewel to us. Outwardly, we may appear to practice the requisite virtues, but we have far more to do than this before it is possible to attain to contemplation, to gain which we should neglect no means, either small or great. Rouse yourselves, my sisters, and since some foretaste of heaven may be had on earth, beg our Lord to give us grace not to miss it through our own fault. Ask Him to show us where to find it. Ask Him to give us strength of soul to dig until we find this hidden treasure, which lies buried within our hearts, as I wish to show you, if it please God to enable me. I said strength of soul, that you might understand that strength of body is not indispensable when our Lord God chooses to withhold it. He makes it impossible for no one to gain these riches, but is content that each should do his best. Blessed be so just a God. But daughters, if you would purchase this treasure of which we are speaking, God would have you keep back nothing from Him, little or great. He will have it all. In proportion to what you know you have given, will your reward be great or small. There is no more certain sign whether or not we have reached the prayer of union. Do not imagine that this state of prayer is like the one preceding it, a sort of drowsiness. I call it drowsiness because the soul seems to slumber, being neither quite asleep nor wholly awake. In the prayer of union, the soul is asleep, fast asleep, as regards the world and itself. In fact, during the short time this state lasts, it is deprived of all feeling whatever, being unable to think on any subject, even if it wished. No effort is needed here to suspend the thoughts. If the soul can love, it knows not how, nor whom it loves, nor what it desires. In fact, it has died entirely to this world to live more truly than ever in God. This is a delicious death, for the soul is deprived of the faculties it exercised while in the body. Delicious because, although not really the case, it seems to have left its mortal covering to abide more entirely in God. So completely does this take place, that I know not whether the body retains sufficient life to continue breathing. On consideration, I believe it does not. At any rate, if it still breathes, it does so unconsciously. The mind entirely concentrates itself on trying to understand what is happening, which is beyond its power. It is so astounded that if consciousness is not completely lost, at least no movement is possible. The person may be compared to one who falls into a dead faint with dismay. Now you may be thinking to yourself that this information is all nice and good for Carmelites, but you aren't a Carmelite, so it may seem hard to relate to. But the fifth mansion is available to us all, not just Carmelites, though we on the outside as lay people may have a harder time reaching it because of all the distractions in our lives. There was one very important line that stood out to me in today's readings. St. Teresa says, quote, "How little do most of us care to prepare our souls that our Lord may reveal this jewel to us," unquote. For the most recent stats I could find, in 2019, the fitness industry made $96 billion in the US. COVID obviously killed that in 2020, but before COVID, the industry was making a lot of money and it looked to only get bigger. The beauty market, which encompasses a lot of things, is a $532 billion industry. That's a lot of money spent on making ourselves look beautiful. In 2018, $1.068 trillion was given to colleges in the US through federal and non-federal funding. That's a lot of money to get an education. There's an argument to be made as to if that is actually improving people's minds, but we'll couch that issue for another day. So we are spending a lot of money on our bodies and our minds. And I didn't even look at all the avenues I could have. I just did a quick Google search. What about our soul, though? Well, prayer is free. Confession is free. Mass is free. Time spent in adoration is free. Praying the rosary is free. Yes, we do tithe to the church in order to have a building to hold Mass and adoration in and a place for our priests to say confession. But our tithes are minuscule compared to the amount of money we collectively spend as a society on stuff for our bodies and minds. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not wrong to spend a reasonable amount of money on your body and your mind. It's good to take care of both. But we spend a massive amount of time focused on our bodies, but very little time on our soul. And taking care of our soul is free for the most part, completely free. And it's the most important thing to take care of. So, if we want to reach the fifth mansion, we are going to have to really take care of our soul, it seems. It's important to be strong in body and mind and make sure that they are all healthy, but we cannot neglect the soul. What is best to shoot for is a good balance of taking care of body, mind, and soul, so that we are able to do whatever it is the Lord asks us to do. To the best of our ability, we should be focused on taking care of all three things. I would say that something good to strive for is that each day we should do something to care for our body, maybe exercise or eating good. Do something for our mind, reading a book, not just social media, and something for our soul. And prayer is one of the number one things, and obviously nothing can beat Mass. So look at your life and see if you have that balance. And if you do, great. Maybe now it is time to press a little bit more into growing in each one of those areas. And if you look at your life and you're not very balanced in those areas, what can you do and what can you change? We can sit around and think about those things all day long, but we have to put our thoughts into action. And so if you find that you are unbalanced in some way, what can you do to make it more balanced? We'll stop there, Catholic Pilgrims. If you are enjoying this podcast, please tell a friend or family member. They don't have to start on season 3. Remember, season 1 is reading through St. Faustina's diary. Season 2 is reading a book from Venerable Fulton Sheen. And then there is obviously this season. And also, if you are enjoying the podcast, please give me a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. It helps to reach other people. And I thank you in advance. Have a great day. I will see you back here soon. And until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.